Hi, my name is Mackenzie Bode. I'm applying for a horse instructor at the farm at Lee Martinez. First, this is my friend Bear here. He's going to be helping me out with everything I'm teaching today. First, I want to just point out a couple safety things. Whenever we approach a horse, we want to approach it from the side, near its shoulder and its neck. This is so that his eyes can see me when I'm approaching, and he knows where I am and what I'm doing. Another thing I want to point out is to never put your feet somewhere where he might step on you. So you never want to be standing under him over here or maybe right in front of him. That's so we don't crush our toes. One more thing is when we're going around the horse, when we're brushing him and tacking him up or any time in general, you always want them to know where you are. So you can do this by having a hand on them at all times. And when you cross their back, you don't want to be super far away. You want to be up close. The closer you are, the less it would hurt if they kicked you. But if you have your hand there and they know you're there, they probably won't. So we always just want to cross close to them and with our hand on them. That's good. Okay. So first we're going to start with grooming. You always want to do this before you put a saddle on, just to ensure the health of your horse. So first we're going to do a curry comb. This brush is meant to get all of the dirt and hay off of your horse and out of its hair. This is one form of curry comb. There's also gel ones, but they all do about the same thing. So with the curry comb, what you're going to want to do is we're just going to go in nice small circles all across the horse, and this just gets all that dirt and hair loose and off to the surface. When you're brushing, you always want to go from the neck to the back. And I always start on the left side and then go to the right side and do the same thing. After we're done currying and getting all of that dust and dirt and hair from under his coat and onto the top, we're going to brush it off with a hard brush. And you're going to start with the neck and go to the back on both sides, just like you did with the curry comb. But with the hard brush, what you're going to want to do is you want to go with the grain of the fur. We don't want to rough it up like that. We want to go straight with it. And we're going to press nice and hard, get it all off there, big strokes. Alright, so this is a pick, and now we're going to pick his hooves. This is important because we don't want any rocks making him uncomfortable or unneeded dirt in the bottom of his foot. So first we're going to start by leaning on him a little bit, make him shift his weight to the other side, and we're going to run our hand along down his back, the back of his leg, to find a pressure point. And he picks his foot up for us. And so this right here, this is the frog. This is the fragile part of his foot that we don't really want to nick or hit too hard. So we're just kind of go around it and dig out all the unneeded dirt and rocks. Anything that would make him uncomfortable. Alright, so first I'm going to talk about tacking up for English riding, because Bear's set is, we have an English saddle for him, and that's how I ride him. So this is a saddle pad for English. These straps tell us that this is the front of it, and when we put it on Bear, we always want to make sure he knows it's here and what we're doing. And when we put it on him, we're just going to lightly throw it up and over. We want this stripe along the middle of the pad to line up with his spine. And we always want to put it on a little farther up on the horse and then scoot it back as needed. This is so that his hair underneath runs the same way. Just like when we were brushing him, we're brushing it with the grain, and we want, when the saddle pad is on him, to keep the hair along the grain as well. A good rule of thumb for where the pad should be is if you run your hand along the side of the pad and down, it should be about in the middle of their shoulder. So let's keep it up there. This is another English pad that we use. It's called the half pad. It's the same thing, it just adds a little more support for the horse's back under the saddle. And we're just going to throw it up there the same way. Making sure it's nice and centered as well on the horse. Next to go on, we have the English saddle. This is a standard English saddle. We have the stirrups raised up on their straps, and we're going to put it on the horse about the same way we put on the pads. And we just want to do a nice little swing. They're not too heavy. We're going to put it up there nice and light on the horse, but we want to make sure that we get this side over. And once we have the saddle up there, we want to make sure it's also even with his spine and just straight on him. And we can adjust the pads as needed. One thing I always do is you want to, in the center, we kind of pull up the saddle pads, pull up the saddle pads. This just leaves room for their neck to move while we're riding them, and keeps irritation from under the saddle. We also want to check on both sides that these under parts of the saddle aren't like crooked underneath and causing irritation. Next to go on, we have the girth. The girth is what keeps the saddle and the saddle pads on the horse while we're riding. It's very important. So this is a standard leather girth. This side has no elastics, and that goes on the right side of the horse. And this side does have elastics, and that goes on the left side. So when we have a girth that has one side of elastics, we always want to attach the leather side first. And this is because the elastics are easier to adjust. So I'm just going to go attach this on the other side. So when we attach the girth to this side, we want to make sure that it goes through the saddle pad strap, and we attach it to the aligning straps under the saddle. And when we first put the saddle and the girth on the horse, they're going to have to let out a little air from their belly from just relaxing. So we want to put it on nice and loose to start with, and then before we get on the horse, we'll check his girth and tighten it to where we need it to be. A good rule of thumb for how tight a girth needs to be is if you take 4 fingers, you want to put it in between your horse and the girth and pull. You don't want to have to pull too hard, but when you pull, you want to just barely have your hand leave the horse's side. So Bear has already let out some air, so we're going to tighten it just a little bit more. And we'll go ahead and tighten it more when we get on him. Demonstrating how to put on a Western saddle. Bear does not have a Western saddle that fits him, so I'll be demonstrating one on this fence. So this is what a Western saddle looks like. It's much bigger and heavier than an English saddle. It also goes on a bit differently. So first what we want to do when we put the saddle onto the horse is we're going to pull up the stirrup and the girth, which will be on the other side, and throw that side up onto the horse so that when we put it on him, the stirrup doesn't just hit his side and spook him or hurt him or anything. When we get the saddle on the horse, we also want to make sure that the saddle pad is comfortable under him. Nothing is bent up or pinching him. We want to make sure that there's no discomfort to the horse. Alright, so next we're going to attach the girth. So that is this guy right here. Its job is exactly the same as the English girth. It is to keep the saddle on the horse. We're going to throw up the stirrup onto the horn so that it's out of our way. And we're going to find the latigo here. The latigo attaches to the girth, and I will show you how it goes on. So imagine we're pulling the girth up around the side of the horse, and we're going to take the latigo, make sure it's not twisted, and put it down through the loop. And it's really long, so we're going to make sure it goes back up and down through the other loop connected to the saddle. And we're going to imagine this is about as tight as we need it for this fence. And we'll put it down through again, making sure nothing is twisted. When we get to the point where we need to attach it and secure it, we're going to remember the number 7, 4, 1. So first we go down through, and we're going to make a 7. And the next step for this knot is we're going to make a 4, and then we'll be making a 1. So we're going to go back up here, through it towards you, and down through to make a 1. And pull it tight, to as tight as we need it. It's also easy to adjust when we adjust the girth before we start riding. You can do it this way, where you just kind of move it through the knot, or we can untie it, pull it, and do the knot again. So that is how you attach a girth for a Western saddle. Alright, so now we're going to put the bridle on the horse. I like to always keep the halter and lead rope attached to him. I'm holding the lead rope and I'm just going to reattach the halter to his neck. That way if he tries to go anywhere, I still have partial control over him. Right. And this is the halter. His is fairly simple. It doesn't have a chin strap, but it does have a noseband and a bit. So first I'm going to put the reins over his neck. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull his head toward me. And Bear is a very tall horse, and so sometimes to get his head down, we have to touch his pressure point up here on his head. And see how he lowers it for me? Sometimes when Bear won't keep his head down for me, I'll keep my hand over his head just like this so I can keep him. I'm going to pull the bit up to his teeth, and I'm going to use my fingers on the side of his mouth where he has no teeth, and I'm going to kind of tickle his tongue, and that allows the bit to slide right into his mouth. And I'll pull his halter over his ears and adjust the band so that it's not hitting his eye. And I'll also pull his hair through for him. And if he had a chin strap, I would now attach it. I would want to make sure that it's somewhat loose, it's just there for extra support. And a good rule of thumb is to put 4 fingers between him and his neck and between the neck strap. Alright. And now that we have him on his in his bridle, we can take the halter and lead rope off. Now before we get on Bear, we have him all saddled up, all groomed. I'm going to put my helmet on for safety, protect the noggin, and then we're going to check his girth again to make sure it's nice and tight. Right now it's super loose, I can pull really easily, so I'm just going to tighten it up real quick. There we go. Now it's nice and tight. I place my 4 fingers in between the girth and him, pull a little, and my fingers barely leave his side. That's exactly how we want it. Next thing we're going to do, the Western saddles already have the stirrups hanging, but since Bear uses an English saddle, I'm going to pull his stirrups down. Then I will lead him over to the mounting block. Alright, so when we're getting on a horse, we're going to lead him to the mounting block. We're going to adjust the mounting block so it's just right. So when we get on a horse, we're going to go up the mounting block. We're going to grab his reins, bring them up and grab so that we have them nice and tight, they're not super loose. We'll grab a piece of his mane and then the front of the saddle. And this is just for support. We'll put our left foot in the stirrup and gently swing our other leg over. Just like that. Alright, when we're on the horse, we want to hold the reins. We're going to hold the reins like ice cream cones. We also want to make sure that the reins aren't pulling on his mouth too much and they're not super loose so that he can't feel our movements. So we're going to keep our hands nice and steady, a good angle in our elbow and up forward. If we're always pulling back, we're going to be pulling on the horse's mouth and they don't like that. So we're going to keep our hands nice and steady right here. We also want to remember our posture on a horse. Our posture on the horse is most important. It keeps us balanced and it keeps them it helps the horse understand our body language and what we want them to do. So we want to keep our posture nice and tall, back straight. Imagine you're being pulled by a string out of the top of your head. On a horse is very important. It helps us stay balanced and it helps us communicate with our horse and what we want him to do. The most important part of our posture is staying up straight, having a straight line through our back and through our heels. So we always want to remember, we want our ear, our elbows, our hip, and our heels to be in a line. Keep our hands nice and low and forward. And we're going to give them a nice little squeeze, nice and easy, and maybe click a little. We want to stay tall, keep our posture straight, our heels down. And another important thing about when you're riding a horse is they're going to go where you look. Your eyes are the leader on a horse. So if you want them to go straight, you need to be looking forward and straight ahead of you. When you're turning, it's the same thing. You lead with your eyes and then follow with your body. We also want to make sure that when we're riding, we're keeping our heels down. This also helps with our balance, along with tightening our core. To turn, we're going to use our reins, our eyes, and our feet to tell the horse where we want to go. So if I want to go right, I'm going to look to the right with my eyes. I'm going to put pressure on my left leg, telling him to go that way. So I'm almost pushing him this way, and I'm going to give him a little nudge with my finger on his reins on the right side. So not only am I slightly pulling him with my hand, but I'm also pushing him with my leg and guiding him with my eye. When we want to go to the left, we're going to use our right leg to push him, our left hand in the reins to pull him, and our eyes to guide him. We always want to look first and then give him the command. And the whole time we want to make sure our posture is still straight and solid to keep our balance and our heels